You are listening to the Monday Night War Review, where frankincense, big business, and big techs chronologically review the Monday Night Wars from 1995 to 2001 between WCW Nitro and WWF Monday Night Raw. Join us for this roller coaster ride of nostalgia and hilarity.
It's my life in the box in front of me. Take it off in my arms, it's the soul of me. You walk by, ask to see me lay face down.
I was very surprised that Raw won in the ratings for this week by a significant margin. Raw won for 2.7 to 1.9 in the Nielsen ratings for this week of September 18th, 1995. Kind of surprised since Raw was a taped show, and it had revealed itself as being a taped show the previous week. And also, Nitro was coming off of a pay-per-view that had a very dramatic finish. And I looked up these ratings just to really double-check and make sure I had found the right information. And it's true that Raw somehow won by a 0.8 margin. Pretty crazy. Especially considering that Raw was not doing so hot overall, and the WWF was kind of in, financial peril. Maybe that's too extreme of a term, but they were struggling financially, which brings me to a modern-day point of relevance. So last night, Big Business sent me a text message about the WWE in 2020 potentially being acquired by Amazon. Business, can you speak more on this?
Yeah, so CNBC has this article out talking about Amazon's potential interest in WWE. At a minimum, the thought is they could acquire the streaming rights to all of WWE's material. The thinking being, or the logic behind that, is that would allow them to use that to bring in a big fan base into the Amazon Prime Video platform. Because, as I'm sure everyone's aware nowadays, you have all these different streaming platforms, especially ones that don't have original content don't have legacy content like NBC or CBS. You have Apple or Netflix or Amazon. They have to create things whole cloth. And the idea is, by doing this, they can kind of shortcut that and bring in a large number of customers. Weirdly, it also discussed the potential for Amazon to just purchase the WWE outright. And it mentions Vince's age and the potential for the McMahon family to want to exit the wrestling industry. First blush reading that, I didn't get the sense that the McMahons would ever want to do that. At least Vince, obviously. And then it seems like, Stephanie and Triple H are pretty well set up to take over after he steps aside. So you guys have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I had heard that they might shop out some of their programming to different streaming services. Like they might put, like the big four pay-per-views, like the Rumble, Mania, SummerSlam, Survivor Series. They might shop some of those out to like YouTube TV or ESPN streaming services or like different things like that. And I wanted to ask you this, Tex, like what would it take you for to give up your WWE Network subscription? Because if I knew that all these pay-per-views were going to be on other things, I'd start to be like, well, what's the point of me even having this network anymore? What do you think about it, Tex?
When I was looking at the article and kind of skimming through, I was wondering if all the old content was going to be kind of moved over to another streaming platform, because if that was the case, I really don't need my WWE Network subscription at all. I mostly use it for the old content and whatnot. I know I have access to pay-per-views currently on WWE Network, but if they were to move the old content to something else like an Amazon Prime Video or something like that, I wouldn't need my subscription to WWE Network anymore.
Yeah, if the wrestling people are still controlling the wrestling programming and it's just being aired somewhere else, I guess I don't really mind that too much if they got acquired by something like Amazon, but I would be very worried about what that could potentially hold for some dark future in wrestling, where it just becomes even more corporatized, mainstreamed. It just kind of sounds sad. I actually would feel a little bit of a tragic sadness if the WWE was acquired. It would just feel like there was no real entrepreneurial spirit to it anymore if it was underneath the looming giant of Amazon. Anyway, that's 2020, and we'll see how that all pans out over the course of the year and years to come. But right now, we're dealing with 1995, September 18th specifically. We're coming off of the Fall Brawl pay-per-view from WCW. Kind of a forgettable card in a lot of ways, I guess. I mean, the main event is really what I wanted to focus on because I think it pertains the most to what will happen on the Nitro episode we're reviewing. War Games was really kind of a hilarious match. It was sort of awesomely bad in a lot of ways. There was this terrible promo from the Taskmaster leading up to the War Games match. I think my favorite part is that he had these dead flowers, and he's like, Hulk Hogan, we got you these posies. They're expired. It was he was talking in his Boston accent, and then he started maniacally laughing, and that was just really corny. And he also was whacking a Hulk Hogan action figure with a shovel at one point. It was just a really bad Taskmaster promo that just made him look like a goof. Hogan was with his War Games team, and they were all decked out in camouflage face paint. And Hogan said that, we've been drinking nothing but gallons of Agent Orange, brother. And that Agent Orange line just cracked me up. I remember one other promo where Hogan said that his team was eating sand in preparation for a match. And Hogan just always cracks me up on the mic. And Luger brought nothing on the mic. There was one point where Luger said, we're together as together can be. And that was his big, tough guy line. The War Games match itself was hilarious. It had all kinds of convoluted rules about the War Games match has 7 rounds, and in the first round, for 5 minutes, 2 men will come in, and then every 2 minutes after that, we'll flip a coin to see who gets a new entrant into the match, and then when everybody's in, you can only win by submission or surrender. And there were 2 rings, and both rings were covered by this humongous steel cage. During the match itself, we had a Savage-Luger confrontation where Luger accidentally hit Savage from behind, and so that created more tension when they already were paranoid about each other and whether they could trust each other. And there was a great series of war cries or yells from Lex Luger when Ming gave him a chop and a headbutt, and it was literally Yes. He had this great series of Luger yells. There were some cool uses of the cage. At one point, Sting was holding onto the top of the cage, and he kicked someone while holding onto the top of the cage. The Dungeon of Doom was cheating by putting their hands underneath the cage and grabbing people's feet. Anyway, eventually Hogan's team wins. Hogan puts a camel clutch on the Zodiac, and Brutus Beefcake taps out. And then Hogan was supposed to get time alone in the ring with the Taskmaster if his team won. And so his team won, and the Taskmaster's in there, and Hogan's beating him up for a while. He's throwing him pillar to post, throwing him into the cage, all this different stuff. And then the Giant comes out. The Giant comes into the ring. Hogan tries to fight him off, but the Giant, chokes him out. And then in very dramatic fashion, Giant basically just snaps Hogan's neck. He just wrings his neck, and then Hogan's on the ground spasming, in his typical Hogan selling mode. It was awesomely bad. I don't think it's worth watching the whole Fall Brawl pay-per-view, but the War Games match was probably worth a watch just because I had never really seen anything quite like it. And from what I hear in future years, the match gets more and more convoluted and ridiculous. But I know Tex watched this. So, Tex, what did you think of the whole War Games thing?
I was trying to wrap my head around the different rules and when another person was going to come in and everything like that. It was interesting to have Sting start out, and he was pretty innovative when he grabbed the top of the cage and was lifting himself up and would do those kicks. But the Luger shouts were the highlight of the match for me. I hadn't laughed quite so hard in quite a while, so I found that very, very good, very entertaining. But the match overall was, I don't know, I just thought it was comedy.
Yeah, I think comedy is a good way of describing it, because I think they were trying to make it so serious. But when your face team is coming out covered in camouflage and the villains are the Dungeon of Doom, I don't think much is going to be taken seriously. Business, did you find time in your busy schedule to squeeze in War Games?
I unfortunately did not. So I was a little confused where the Giant came in. You know, he was the immediate promo or interview on Nitro, and I didn't remember him ever being mentioned before. Was that his first entrance into the WCW?
I was confused because at War Games, they had a segment, at Fall Brawl, before the War Games match, they had a segment where the Giant came out in like a monster truck, and he like ran over Hulk Hogan's motorcycle and then was like laughing maniacally and stuff, and I wasn't sure if like maybe that was the first time he showed up, but it seemed like he had already made some kind of appearance. And so then I was kind of really confused. It's like, if the Giant's in the cahoots, if he's in cahoots with the Dungeon of Doom, why isn't he part of the War Games team? Like, why would you wait until after the match for him to come out? He just, he's just the backup plan in case the team loses or something. Like, that was a little confusing. But I will say, if you didn't watch Fall Brawl, Nitro would have been confusing in general. Because, like, for example, the main event we're going to get on Nitro eventually is Brian Pillman and Ric Flair, and like that made no sense on a surface level if you didn't have context from the Fall Brawl pay-per-view, because during the Flair-Arn Anderson match, for some reason, Brian Pillman got on the apron and like interfered and kicked Flair in the back of the head and let Arn Anderson win. And I mean, maybe it's because Pillman had a really like frustrating long match in like the opener of Fall Brawl with Johnny B. Bad. Like, I couldn't really figure out what the hell Brian Pillman's motivation was, and they didn't really explain it ever. And so that, that's one thing that you wouldn't have been able to figure out easily. And then Bischoff and Mongo kept saying, oh, we're going to show you what happened from Fall Brawl. We're going to show you. But they didn't really show you until like 30 minutes into the program. And so, I mean, maybe there's a reason Nitro didn't do that hot in the ratings, because they didn't do the greatest job of contextualizing all the things that were happening in reference to the pay-per-view that had happened the previous night. But anyway, that's the main event that we'll get for Nitro later. It's Flair and Pillman. On the Raw side, we're going to get a strange main event where it's Yokozuna and Owen Hart versus Men on a Mission, but we'll get to that down the line. So Nitro opens with, as Business alluded to, we got Gene Okerlund backstage, and he's catching up with Kevin Sullivan, the Taskmaster, and the Giant as they arrive to the arena in an ambulance. And I thought the ambulance thing was really awesome. Like, I don't think I'd ever really seen that, where someone makes their grand entrance to the arena in the ambulance. Usually it's a truck or a limousine or, something like that. But I mean, I really enjoyed this segment. At one point, they allude to the fact that the Giant might be the son of Andre the Giant. Gene Okerlund kind of chastises the Giant and says, Andre would be ashamed of what you're doing, and the Giant disagrees. He says that, if Andre was still around, he'd be right by my side, taking down Hulkamania. And I don't know, I enjoyed it. I thought it was kind of interesting. What did you guys think of this way to open the show?
I was a little confused. Obviously, I had not watched Fall Brawl. I did not care for the ambulance. I'm going to disagree with you on that. It seemed weird. Like, it didn't really follow for me. Unless the idea was, oh yeah, we just put Hulk in here and we're going to put more people in here and we drive around in it. I did like the idea that he could be the son of Andre the Giant. And obviously they set that up with his whole outfit. Generally, though, I as soon as I saw him, I remembered the Taskmaster. And I remembered how corny he was and how much I never really cared for him. Generally, as a way to open the show, fine. Got us in from Fall Brawl, but probably could have done something better than that.
So after Fall Brawl, with the Giant coming out and doing the whole snapping the neck spot on Hulk Hogan, which I thought looked pretty brutal, honestly. I actually thought that looked pretty good. But this opening promo, when they were suggesting that Andre the Giant is, this Giant Paul White's father, they never actually said Andre, did they? Or did I miss that? Because I had that as a question mark.
They did not.
I didn't think they did. So I was wondering, I was going to throw that up for discussion as, were they actually trying to suggest that Andre was his dad? But I figured that was the only logical conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly hinted at. I don't think they really, came out and said it explicitly. So I think if you weren't really, in the know about things, then you might not have gotten the subtext,
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, I see your point, Business, about the ambulance, where it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Like, where did they get this ambulance? You know, do they just go to some hospital and steal it? Or, like, you know, that doesn't, because it's not like they had this driver with them or anything, I don't think, you know, so that was a little confusing. I just thought it was so unusual, and I had never really seen it on a wrestling show that I think it just kind of had a novelty for me.
To that point, it would have been funny if they had stolen an ambulance from the hospital. And, like, the whole night at Nitro, you have cops trying to track down the Taskmaster or something for this ambulance they stole. But just to do it seemed kind of like a waste.
Yeah, because, I mean, I guess the idea was that, you know, Hogan had been taken away in an ambulance, so they were reminding people of that or something. And, yeah, I agree with you, Tex. I did think the spot where the Giant snapped Hogan's neck actually did look pretty good. Like it, and just in general, Paul White as the Giant, he's great. Like at this point, he's still pretty green. You know, he hasn't done a lot in wrestling yet, but like he just carries himself so well, and he's decent on the mic. And I was amazed at how agile he was when he came out during the War Games match and was like swinging into the cage, you know, and hopping over the ropes. You know, just like jumping over the ropes at, 7 feet tall. And they've called him the world's biggest athlete. And I mean, he really is quite athletic for his size. So then we get a WCW World Tag Team Champion match between Harlem Heat and the American Males. It was supposed to be the American Males versus the Blue Bloods, but then Harlem Heat just comes out and beats up the Blue Bloods before they can even get to the ring. And that was kind of confusing because Harlem Heat had just won the tag titles at Fall Brawl from Bunkhouse Buck and Dirty Dick Slater the previous night. And so Harlem Heat's the champs. They don't have to put their titles on the line, but they decide to beat up the Blue Bloods, go to the ring themselves, and then challenge the American Males for their belts. And so it really made Harlem Heat seem pretty stupid as champions. Like, it just really didn't make any sense. Harlem Heat comes down with Sister Sherry. And another thing that was probably confusing based on the Fall Brawl pay-per-view is that at one point in this match, Colonel Parker comes out and Sherry like falls into his arms and he like carries her away. And like the previous night on Fall Brawl, Parker and Sherry had been like making out in the ring, in like the side ring while the action was going on in the main ring, because every match had 2 rings. And so there was this Sherry Colonel Parker love story going on that I think, I don't know, it would have been hard to follow if you didn't really have that backstory. You know, I had to laugh at the American Males theme song, you know.
I have to ask you real quick, though.
Yeah.
Both, did you get your grandma out the bathroom? Because if you didn't, you're getting the bomb stare, or she's got some real beauties to look at out here. I'm almost as bad as Mongo. Real quick, the Blue Bloods. It's Steven Regal, and then the Earl of Beaton.
I'm pretty sure that's correct.
Okay, all right. Okay, I was trying to figure that out. I actually enjoyed the whole Harlem Heat beating them up and then running out to the ring to defend their title. Where I got confused was the reference to Nick Bockwinkel and the question as to if he had to sanction the match.
Yeah, so Nick Bockwinkel was a wrestler back in the day. He, was a mentor to a lot of guys, trained a lot of guys. He had this reputation for being very gentlemanly, very intelligent, backstage and everything like that. But right now he was kind of, I think, in the Gorilla Monsoon sort of position where he's kind of like the president.
Commissioner.
Right, the commissioner. And so they really didn't they didn't really do a great job of like explaining that, but I'm pretty sure that's what the Bockwinkel reference was. And so yeah, technically it wasn't like a sanctioned match because we were supposed to get the American Males and the Blue Bloods, and maybe that'll matter down the line where they're like, oh, this match didn't like count, so Harlem Heat gets their belts back or they get a rematch or something. Like maybe that'll matter down the line. Tex, I wanted to ask you about Harlem Heat and Sister Sherry. Like, I wanted to ask you if you feel like the Harlem Heat gimmick and then also maybe Sister Sherry, if it kind of holds up politically and racially, after all these years. I mean, what are your thoughts on Harlem Heat?
Well, I always loved Harlem Heat growing up, but I never could understand the connection with Sister Sherry. I don't know if she has something in her background that would, make her an adequate Sister Sherry. But anytime I think of Harlem Heat and Sister Sherry, I think of the infamous Booker T promo on Hulk Hogan.
Oh, God.
I think we all know that promo.
Hold on just a minute. Don't assume. Tell me about that promo.
Booker T's cutting a promo on Hulk Hogan, and I think they're setting up a tag match or something. But long story short, it says, Hulk Hogan, we're coming for you, and then insert the N-word.
Yeah, Booker T basically just slips up, and he calls Hogan the N-word. And
you can see it all over his face.
Yeah.
As soon as he says it, he starts puts his hands on his face. He starts shaking his head. It's hilarious, man.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and Sherry gives him this really sympathetic pat on the back.
Yeah.
The whole thing is really awkward.
Let me tell you something, Gene Oken, you out here talking about a clique. The only clique you need to know about is the Harlem Heat and Sister Sherry. See, because what you dealing with here is the brotherhood. It's nonstop from this point on in WCW. We take what we want, and after we take Lex Luger and the Giant, we want the gold sucker. Hulk Hogan, we coming for you, nigga.
I should point out for the record, Stevie Ray.
But yeah, I actually looked into it, and I couldn't find anything about Sherry's ethnic background. All I was able to find out was that she was from Alabama, but I couldn't get any confirmation. It was pretty funny on these wrestling message boards. All these people were speculating about her racial background, but no one was able to really give any definitive answer. During the match, they kept talking about how, these guys aren't just street thugs, these are trained athletes, and Bobby Heenan kept saying, they're combining their, street smarts and their, street fighting with, technical professional wrestling, and, they were trying to put them over and stuff. But yeah, the American males, man, I don't know, the theme song is awesomely bad, and it's funny and everything, but they look like Chippendales or something, they're out there in their suspenders, and they're supposed to be just eye candy for the ladies, and it's Scotty Riggs and Marcus Buff Bagwell. Yeah, I just...
American males, American males, American males, American males, American males, American males, American males. When you see them coming, better run for cover. Girls, you don't need a weekend lover. American males. If they want to talk to you, you better not listen. You might wind up in critical condition. American males.
Well, later on with Scott Steiner in the Big Papa Pump era, when he has his falling out with Buff Bagwell, he kind of references this era, and he's shooting on Bagwell almost. It sounds like a shoot, and he says, real men aren't Chippendale dancers and something else. So,
what I know about Buff Bagwell is later in life, he actually became a hired gigolo.
So I think I've seen that shoot interview on YouTube.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. He had prices and everything.
Yeah, I mean, so apparently it wasn't too far off from real life, I guess Bagwell was kind of a Chippendale in his own way in real life. So, yeah, I mean, there were some nice spots in the ring, mostly from Booker T, the one guy who could, really, really work. I mean, Riggs and Bagwell are fine. Stevie Ray, never a great worker, really. But Booker T, he did his axe kick and his wheel kick, and he was just flying around, super athletic. I thought this was a really weird finish. Basically, Sherry falls into Colonel Parker's arms, and, he's carrying her out, and I guess that distracts Harlem Heat. So Booker T gets, I think, Bagwell up in a back suplex, but Bagwell reverses it, falls on top of him, and pins him. So the American males are suddenly the tag team champions, even though the Harlem Heat just won the belts the previous night. And I was just kind of that just seemed like the wrong decision. And the only thing that I could imagine was that they were trying to build some kind of dissension between Sherry and the Heat, where Sherry is no longer focused on them. She's not doing well as their manager. That was the only angle that I could guess that they were trying to extrapolate from this whole thing. I mean, what did you guys think about the finish? It just seemed totally wrong to me.
I will say the whole Colonel Parker thing confuses me, especially because I'm an Elvis fan, and there's Elvis's Colonel Parker. And then whatever is going on between him and Sherry doesn't make sense to me, but obviously I missed it in Fall Brawl. I did not mind the upset. I thought it was kind of funny because you would just expect that the Harlem Heat would go out there, because they're feeling good after winning the titles and just destroy the American males, which is what I was expecting. I kind of actually enjoyed the upset. And Booker T is awesome. I actually enjoyed this match. I gave it a 3 out of 5.
Yeah, I was on my way to giving this match 3 stars until the finish, and I didn't really mind the upset so much. It was just the execution of it. When Bagwell reversed the pump handle slam and just kind of lands on Booker, and then it seems like they're waiting forever for that 3 count, and Booker's just kind of shaking his legs, trying to make it look like he's trying to get out. But I wasn't really believing it. Additionally, with the tag titles being on the line, I just thought that was kind of a strange finish and a strange way to, I don't know. I didn't think the execution was great overall.
After this match, we get a Gene Okerlund interview with Ric Flair, and I mean, I didn't take a lot of notes about this. I mean, he was kind of just yelling to Arn Anderson about stuff. He was kind of saying, Arn broke the code, whatever the code is. You broke the code, Arn. And Flair did some strutting around and bounced off the ropes when he was getting excited. And he called out Brian Pillman for what Pillman did the previous night at Fall Brawl, and kind of said he was going to get his revenge and stuff. I mean, I thought it was pretty typical Ric Flair stuff here. But did you guys have any notes or comments about the interview?
It was a little forgettable, although I will say I enjoyed what came later.
Yeah, nothing specifically on the quick promo.
And then we get the Saturday night card that's coming up for WCW. We're going to get Sting versus Lord Steven Regal, and we're going to get a couple other matches. There's going to be a one-on-one interview with Dusty Rhodes, and I thought that was pretty great. And then we're going to get an exclusive update on the medical status of Hulk Hogan. Then we get Johnny B. Bad versus Paul Orndorff. And I got to bring this up about Paul Orndorff. So on Fall Brawl, there was this really funny promo where Paul Orndorff is like backstage and he's all upset. He's like throwing his bag and gear around and he's yelling at himself in the mirror about how he doesn't know who he is anymore, and everything's going wrong and he's totally lost. And I don't know if you guys remember the psychic named Gary Spivey, who was like on TV back in the day. He's got this like ridiculous like silver afro kind of hair, and like he almost looks like Richard Simmons or something. Anyway, Gary Spivey, the psychic, comes and he consoles Paul Orndorff and helps him rediscover who he is. And he's like, "You are Mr. Wonderful. You just don't know it yet." And like all this stuff. And then at the end, Orndorff has all this new confidence and he's looking himself in the mirror again. And it's just hilarious. But that's why Orndorff is coming out with his new music on Nitro. And I loved Paul Orndorff's theme music. It's like, he's so wonderful,
and he
wonderful. Yeah, and I love how the announcers are so upset about the music. They're like, "Oh my God, this is terrible!"
Yeah.
Like,
wonderful, they call him Mr. Wonderful. You know he is so wonderful, and he knows it too.
He's got these little like pocket mirrors that he's carrying around and looking himself in the mirror. And so Orndorff is out here on Nitro with newfound confidence from his psychic mentor Gary Spivey, and he's facing Johnny B. Bad, and Johnny B. Bad is coming off of a grueling match with Brian Pillman the previous night at Fall Brawl. They wrestled forever. It was the opening match on Fall Brawl, and they went super long. They even had an overtime in the match because it ended as a draw and had to restart. It's almost like a hidden gem, I would say. But in that match, Johnny B. Bad got his eye busted open, and so he was bleeding for real during the match, and he actually had a bunch of stitches. They allude to that during this Orndorff Johnny B. Bad match here. But yeah, I mean, I didn't actually take that many notes about the match other than, how much I loved the Gary Spivey segment before and how much I loved Orndorff's new music. But I mean, what did you guys think of Orndorff versus Johnny B. Bad?
I loved Mr. Wonderful. So Johnny B. Bad, that's Wildman Mark Marrow, right?
Yeah.
Later on, yeah. That is just the Johnny B. Bad gimmick and probably the Wildman gimmick are just not good gimmicks. And I'm glad Mr. Wonderful won. Johnny B. Bad he's not a winner. So.
Oh my God. I mean, I got to agree with you that Mark Marrow is a really great worker who was saddled with some not so great gimmicks. And I got to say, I think Johnny B. Bad is probably better than Wildman. But yeah, what do you think, Tex?
I was pleasantly surprised by the match. Coming out, seeing Paul Orndorff come out with the music and how they were, kind of putting over the music in a heel way. I thought he was like the quintessential heel in this match. I thought his work was great. I did make a note on one thing. You had Johnny B. Bad coming off the top rope, and Orndorff put his legs up, and it was kind of weak looking. Like his foot was like a foot away, a full 12 inches away from Johnny B. Bad's head, and didn't really look.
I noticed that same thing. Yeah,
it didn't look great.
Johnny B. Bad must just have been tired from the prior night.
That's what I'm thinking too. If you ever listen to like Cornette talk about Johnny B. Bad / Mark Marrow, he was basically trained to play Johnny B. Bad, play one character. And that's why the two characters, the Wild Man and Johnny B. Bad, are like the same exact character, and they have the same exact match. And I've heard Cornette say that. And in watching this match, I was like, yeah, this looks like I'm watching a Wild Man match. The finish was actually pretty nice. I liked it. It was very similar to the finish in Bulldog versus Bret Hart in SummerSlam 92 with the sunset flip, and then Orndorff just kind of steps into it and gets the pinfall.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the choreography of the finish was good, but I thought it was, again, kind of a strange choice just to have Orndorff beat Johnny B. Bad. I mean, I guess, it makes sense if Orndorff has this, newfound confidence that he's just regained, from Gary Spivey and everything. I guess it'd be weird for him to just lose, but yeah, I just kind of felt bad for Johnny B. Bad in this match. I feel like he probably deserved to win, really. After this match, we get a segment, I guess is what you'd want to call this. It's a segment from the set of Baywatch where Savage is in the middle of the beach doing bench presses, and is it Luger who's spotting him? Yeah, it's Luger who's spotting him, I think. And he's just doing bench presses, and there's these Baywatch girls in their red swimsuits next to them, and they're cheering Randy on as he's doing his big sets of bench presses. And all of a sudden the Taskmaster comes out of nowhere on the beach and attacks Savage and starts choking him with the bench press bar, and then hits him a bunch of times. And then Ric Flair, of all people, comes to Randy Savage's aid and kind of drags the Taskmaster away and yells at him for being out of his mind and going too far. And
the devil.
Yeah, the devil. And I mean, I know that WCW had a Baywatch episode crossover where WCW quote unquote invades Baywatch. And I saw some clips of that, and I wonder if that Baywatch episode would be a good idea for a future review in its own right, because it looks so hilarious. But I mean, anyway, what did you guys think of this ridiculous Baywatch segment?
I have to ask, are you sure Luger was spotting Macho Man?
No, I'm not. I was trying to remember who it was, and
I feel like he would have done something. Otherwise, it's just he's gone, and then Ric Flair comes.
It makes perfect sense that Luger was a spotter since he didn't do anything.
I can't remember, but I think the Taskmaster kind of started by bopping the spotter in the head, whoever it was. I think the Taskmaster started by taking out the spotter, and then he started. But I don't remember if it was Luger or not. I mean, anyway, Tex, any thoughts on this overall? Did you think it was working or not working?
Yeah, a couple things. So, did y'all notice the girls laughing and still smiling and grinning when Macho was getting attacked and choked out by the bench press bar?
I did not, and that is awesome.
Yeah, they were still grinning and everything. They still had smiles on their faces. I thought that was pretty funny.
Ridiculous.
If I'm not mistaken, wasn't the WWF doing something with Baywatch in early 95, like Royal Rumble 95? Wasn't Pamela Anderson involved, and then she was involved in WrestleMania 11?
Yes.
So this is the same year. They're both doing business with like Baywatch in the same year.
Yes. And I remember when Pam Anderson, because Pam Anderson was gonna escort whoever won the Rumble. She was gonna escort them down to their match at WrestleMania. And I remember this like promo that the WWF had where all the guys were like calling Pam Anderson and leaving messages on her like answering machine. So it's just this segment where like it's like beep, and then it's like Diesel's voice, and he's like, hey Pam, how about you and I like go get a drink later? And then it's like beep, and it's Doink the Clown being like, hey Pam, like it's just like dude, it's awesome, guys, it's awesome. Yeah, it is. I didn't notice that text that they're both kind of going after the same show, because Baywatch was just crushing it during that year. Like somehow that show was so popular. I guess the whole point of this Baywatch segment on Nitro was to hint about Ric Flair turning face. That's all I could like really glean from it, was like, okay, Flair's a good guy in this case, like he's coming to Savage's aid. And I think the whole thing with Flair versus Anderson and Pillman interfering, and I think they're just trying to like turn Flair face or something. But I just don't even understand that tactic, because Ric Flair is always over, whether he's like a heel or a face. Like fans just love him, so it's like you don't need to turn him face. I guess it could be building a Randy Savage Taskmaster feud, although I'm not excited about that. So yeah, anyway, it was weird. I mean, maybe it was all just to promote their crossover with Baywatch. So then we get an interview. Speak of the devil, we get an interview with Gene Okerlund, who has Randy Savage in the ring with him. Ah, man, I just love Randy Savage. He's doing his typical, I'm crazy, I'm paranoid, I don't trust anybody. He says thanks but no thanks to Ric Flair for Flair's help on the beach. He also says that he's going to kill the Taskmaster by cutting the head off of the snake. He says that Hogan is a bad judge of character because he let Luger onto the War Games team. And
I love how he said it too. He said, "You, constructive criticism, are a horrible judge of character."
Yeah, he also said, "I'm sure Hogan is watching live in the hospital from his video scope." Oh, Savage is the best, man. His video scope.
Yeah, he could actually talk, which Luger comes out, and that idiot can hardly speak. And I love the part where Savage basically has to prompt him at one point, because Luger's just standing there. He says, "Come on and talk to me."
I noticed that. Savage was even smiling at him. Like, okay, come on, man, say something. Yeah, like, and Savage again accuses Luger, Sting, and Jimmy Hart of being traitors again. And as business said, Luger comes out and confronts him. They sort of get in a little argument. They both admit that they really just want the WCW championship, but Savage tries to claim that he's the one who's being more upfront and forthright about it. Luger says the opposite. He's the one who's been telling the truth the whole time. They kind of slap each other in the face a little bit. Tex, what did you think of the Savage interview and the Luger confrontation?
I thought it was interesting. He didn't approve of Ric Flair coming to his aid in the beach.
I don't blame him. And then this was a more innocent time, because again, they did the whole playing with kids and big boys thing. And that, I mean, obviously it got some, cynical jokes about it back then. But if they were to use that kind of language now, they would get shredded.
Another really creepy thing from back in the day was they would do these like commercials where like little kids would be acting like Shawn Michaels, and they would be like dressed in his gear, and they'd be like pretending to do like a striptease and stuff. That was really creepy. Like they're like trying to sell Shawn Michaels merchandise, and they're showing these kids like taking off their like vests and like showing their bare chests. I was like, this is freaking weird, man. This is like some disturbing shit. But yeah, that was not a wise decision. But you're right. I guess it was just a more innocent time. All right, so Okerlund and Savage and Luger wrap up their scuffle in the ring. And then we finally get the replay from Fall Brawl that Bischoff had promised us at the beginning of the episode. I mean, I guess he was trying to keep the fans watching, but I mean, it was a long time into the show and we get this. And so we get the quick clip of the Giant running over Hogan's motorcycle in the monster truck and, laughing maniacally. And then we also get the clip of the Giant snapping Hogan's neck. There's a lot of speculation about the health status of Hogan and all of that. And then we lead into the main event, which is Ric Flair versus Brian Pillman. I'm pretty sure they showed a segment from Fall Brawl where Pillman got up on the apron during the Arn Anderson-Ric Flair match, and he interfered, and he kicked Flair in the back of the head, and that let Arn win the match. I thought Pillman and Flair, it's a good combination. They're both great workers, and I've been noticing that Brian Pillman seems to always snipe somebody off the top rope with his drop kick. That almost seems like a signature spot. Like all the Pillman matches I've seen, someone tries to come off the rope for like a double axe handle, and he just drop kicks him right out of the air, and it always looks awesome. I love that spot.
I gotta say, I feel like you did not give enough time for this monster truck crushing Hulk's heart. I loved that. I loved the camera work that they did was really nice, because they did the whole, like, here comes the monster truck, and they make it look like people had to get out of the way or they're going to get killed if the giant drove over them. But I loved it. I liked the giant, like, his maniacal laughter is so forced at that point.
Yeah.
Kind of funny. And then Hulk just, like, hitting on the side of the monster truck. It looks stupid. I loved it. So it was helpful for me that they finally showed some footage from Fall Brawl, because I had no idea what had gone on. I do agree it was pretty sweet to see the giant just like jump over the top rope into the ring, being such a big guy, and then screwing Hulk's head like a bottle of cheap whiskey. Just loved it.
Yeah, what a great call from Heenan.
Exactly. No, I really enjoyed that. And it was a good lead-in into the Ric Flair Pillman match, which I will say I really enjoyed. And I kind of got the sense that it was like, obviously I did not see what happened between Pillman and Flair, but I was bought into the match. The whole idea that it sounds like, to your point, Flair turning face. It's kind of like, I think they said in the first episode of Nitro, Flair doesn't know where he is. He's trying to figure things out. And then it sounds like this is kind of like Pillman's turn the heel a bit. He's beginning to go crazy. And I just really enjoyed, both the match itself, and I loved the finish, which isn't surprising, given that when, we were kids wrestling, if I had to get one of you guys to tap out, it was a figure four.
Amazing. So, you're gonna like things that happen down the road, because if you like the monster truck segment, there is an actual monster truck battle that happens between Hogan and the Giant, and that's all I'll say. I don't want to give away too much, but they literally have a monster truck battle on top of a building at some point. So, anyway, yeah, Tex, what did you think about Flair and Pillman?
I really enjoyed this match, and I really enjoyed Flair. His pace, he set a really quick pace for a Ric Flair match. I was pretty surprised about it. It's like he was keeping up with Pillman's working style. You had a top rope axe handle to the outside. Flair was coming off the top rope, obviously, because you mentioned Pillman caught him with that drop kick, and that, to me, that spot always just looks stiff, and it always looks good. And then, the finish was solid. But did you guys notice the sign in the crowd that says, "Flying Brian, time to ride Space Mountain, woo"?
That's awesome.
No, that's pretty nonsensical.
We know what Space Mountain alludes to, right?
Yeah, no, I don't. Like Disney World?
Okay, no. Okay, so Ric Flair has famously claimed that he has been with 10,000 women have taken a ride on Space Mountain.
Amazing.
Yes.
Amazing.
And, Space Mountain is also the oldest ride in the park, but has the longest line.
Amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
so the sign saying "Flying Brian, time to take a ride on Space Mountain" was just hilarious.
Okay, now the subtext of that is disturbing to me.
That is a little disturbing.
There you go.
I will say that I probably didn't notice that, because I was calling 1-900-909-9900.
Amazing.
I want to see if I could get an update on Hulk's mission.
Awesome.
It sounds like, though, the line's disconnected, so I was willing to pay $1.49 a minute.
A minute. As much as I agree with you guys that I like the match, I'm not into the finish of the Pillman Flair match. And I gotta say, I didn't really like any of the Nitro finishes, if I'm being honest with you. Like, I didn't like the Harlem Heat finish. I didn't really like the Orndorff Johnny B. Bad finish. And I thought Flair just beating Pillman with the figure 4, like, that just doesn't really seem to help anybody. Like, what does that really do for Pillman? Like, okay, he's having this heel turn and he's going crazy and he's turning his back on people, but then Flair just beats him clean with his signature submission in the middle of the ring. You know, it's kind of like, okay, why should I care about Flying Brian after that? Like, Flair just...
Because he is a milestone on his way back to getting Arn Anderson.
Yeah.
Making sure Arn Anderson pays for breaking the code.
And he had a grueling match the night before, so I could see it.
I guess that's true. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, maybe it's just maybe my research about the ratings somehow influenced my feelings on the show, but I was kind of like going into Nitro being like, man, why did this do so bad in the ratings? And I mean, I do feel like it was kind of not that satisfying to me. And I mean, maybe I had watched all this Fall Brawl stuff, so I was kind of just maybe a little tapped out on WCW, but yeah.
I'm going to ask you this. Raw was a Thursday night show, a special show.
Yes.
Was there something going on that Monday night that got Vince to put it to Thursday, and WCW kept it but lost ratings to this other thing? I guess I would be curious to know that. I might do a little research. Hold on.
Get on that news on the internet from 95 and see what you can find. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know. I do know that it was a Thursday night Raw, which was a little unusual. It was another taped Raw show. It's the last of the Canton Civic Center taped shows. It was aired on a Thursday. I mean, that could definitely be why Raw won in the ratings, was just, you know, based on what Nitro had to go up against on Monday. This is, in general, the lowest Nitro rating that we've had since we started doing the reviews. Granted, it's only 3 episodes, but I mean, because the other ones were like a 2.4, 2.5, and this one was all the way down to 1.9, and Raw somehow managed to do a 2.7, which is the highest of all the shows we've done so far. I don't know. I was just trying to kind of decipher, decode, you know, why the ratings had kind of ended up the way that they were just on the show's content. And I don't know. I mean, I gotta say, Nitro was fine. Like, it's not like I found the show offensive or anything like that. You know, I was entertained, but I just, yeah, from the booking perspective, everything just felt kind of rushed, and I just felt like the people that needed to get something out of the booking really weren't. But so Flair beats Pillman. You know, next week on Nitro, they tell us that we're going to get Alex Wright versus Disco Inferno. Kurosawa is going to be in action, managed by Colonel Parker. Randy Savage is going to take on Kevin Sullivan. So there we go. We got something from the Baywatch segment. And then Lex Luger is going to face Ming, and I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to Lex Luger and Ming. I'm looking forward to Luger and Ming. I gotta say that much. And I bet Wright and Disco could be a pretty good match too. But so as we said, you know, Monday Night Raw is now a special Thursday Night Raw edition. This is the 127th episode of Raw that's ever aired. It is the final taped show from the Canton Civic Center. So moving forward, we'll see if they're doing multiple tapings in another location, or if we're going to get actual live Raw episodes in the future. We'll have to see. As I said, this Raw show did a 2.7. It was building up to In Your House 3, so that could have maybe helped its ratings in a way. It was the go-home show before the In Your House 3 pay-per-view. We have Vince and Jerry the King on commentary again, and I liked how Raw just immediately started with a match. There wasn't a whole lot of, you know, build-up or promos, or, you know, because nowadays when you watch Raw, it often starts with just somebody coming out for like a 25 or 30-minute promo in the ring, and you're like, oh my god, man, okay. Like, I liked how this just started immediately with a match. We get 1-2-3 Kid versus Razor Ramon, building off of last week's feud between them where they were in the ring accusing each other of costing each other matches, and, you know, the Kid saying that he's always been in Razor's shadow and Razor always just treats him like a little kid and all of this stuff. So we get these two guys facing off. I'm pretty sure this is just the second time they've ever wrestled. The first time was when 1-2-3 Kid was basically just like a jobber, and he pulled an upset victory over Ramon, and, you know, that was like a big deal and a pretty famous match. And so I think this is just the second time they've ever wrestled, and, these guys are great together. They clearly have a lot of chemistry as workers. I mean, they're friends in real life. I mean, it's just a great combination of people to have Ramon, and Kid wrestling together. I thought there were a lot of great spots. I love the fall away slam off the top rope. That was awesome. Just good stuff from an in-ring work perspective. We get a, interference at the end of the match, which we'll get to. But, Tex, what did you think about 1-2-3 Kid and Razor Ramon?
Anytime you get the guys from the Clique working with each other, seems like they give it a little extra effort. I mean, they might work a little bit more stiff, and I always like Razor against smaller guys. Some of the spots you see in this match, like the chokeslam spot, it was similar to against HBK at WrestleMania 10 in the ladder match. He had a similar chokeslam spot. The collision spot was very similar to the collision spot in the first ladder match with Shawn Michaels. So Razor against smaller guys, you really see his arsenal. And like there was a corner clothesline where he really laid it into 1-2-3 Kid. And I'm like, yeah, this was a fun match to watch. I didn't love the finish too much, and that's the only thing that impacted, my score.
There was one thing during the match that I wrote down that I thought was pretty funny from like a production standpoint, because there's this moment in the match where the 1-2-3 Kid has Razor in like a sleeper, and they're kind of on the ground, and then Vince says, "Oh, we have to go to break, but we'll be back," and then it just immediately cuts back to Kid still having Razor in the sleeper. It made it so clear that it was a taped show that they were just able to like edit however they want, because on a live event, the Kid wouldn't have had Razor in a sleeper for like the whole commercial break in like the exact same spot in the ring. And so when you're watching it on the network and you don't even have to watch commercials, it's like so obvious. Like they cut away, he's in the sleeper. They cut back, he's in the same spot in the ring with the sleeper still on. And so to me, that just like further gave away that it was totally like a taped match.
I gotta ask something. Has the sleeper hold ever actually worked? Have you guys seen someone win a match with the sleeper?
Definitely. So, So Roddy,
it was Roddy Piper's finisher.
It is Roddy Piper's. It's Roddy Piper's finisher, and I remember a specific match where Piper won the Intercontinental title from the Mountie, and he beat the Mountie with the sleeper hold, and I think that's really like the only belt that Piper ever really won. Yeah, I've seen it in my lifetime, even though you're right, it's very rare for that to actually win a match.
Yeah, it's rare.
And then I'll tell you the other thing that kind of confused me. I thought this match should have been last and not first.
Agreed.
There was some kind of build-up to this. The whole Yokozuna and Owen Hart versus, what are their names?
Men on a Mission.
Men on a Mission. Yeah, I did not really have much in the way of stakes in that match. Especially, it wasn't even a title match.
I know. I ripped that match last episode, as Gorilla Monsoon's fan service, where he was like giving the fans what they want. And yeah, I mean, we'll get to that as the main event. I mean, I think like it was better than I thought it was going to be. But anyway, I don't want to get ahead of myself. So, in the 1-2-3 Kid and Razor Ramon match, it basically ends with Dean Douglas coming out and interfering, similarly to what happened last week. And he basically does a splash from the top rope on Razor's back because Razor's lying on his stomach. And then even though all this time elapses after that splash, the Kid just like rolls Ramon over and pins him, and that's it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I know. So much time elapsed from the splash before the 3 count, and it still beat him, and it was kind of like, all right, like
it's like he was knocked out cold from getting splashed on his back.
Yeah, it's just, I just think they didn't really get the timing very good with the ref bump and then the splash and then the final count, and the Kid just had his arm just draped over Ramon's midsection. It wasn't even like a legit cover or anything. So that's 2 victories for 1-2-3 Kid over Razor Ramon. And like, I mean, I know that Ramon probably gets his, he gets his receipt later, and he'll get a victory over him. But kudos to Scott Hall for putting Waltman over, and that's just a nice thing to do, especially for this person who was once known as the Lightning Kid. So. He really put Sean Waltman on the map, basically. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a good match with kind of a lame finish, but, it is, what I will say about this Raw is almost all of the segments were building towards In Your House, and I thought like that was nice. Like it was a rushed show, you know, it's only like 45 minutes of airtime, and like, but everything was kind of plugging In Your House pretty well. Like, so this was setting up to the Razor Ramon Dean Douglas match that we're gonna get at In Your House, and like just making Dean Douglas very hateable, you know. And speaking of which, after the match, we get this awesome segment backstage where Dean Douglas is writing on the chalkboard. He's giving grades to people in the match. So he gives 1-2-3 Kid a D grade, which stands for dumb, because he said you're dumb because you think, you know, you won the match on your own, but I'm the reason you won the match, so you're getting a D for dumb. And then he gives Razor Ramon an E grade, which stands for elevate, because Razor will have to elevate himself to be able to be on the level of Dean Douglas at In Your House. He gives himself an A. Okay, like he gives himself an A grade because he's just great, I guess. And then he says that Ramon will get an N grade on Sunday because it'll be a no-brainer who will win the match. You know, basically himself. And if you can spell, you know, that acrostic spelled out Dean, D-E-A-N. And he, you know, he circled the acrostic. He called it an acronym, but I'll forgive him.
I noticed that.
Yeah. And, you know, I just thought, like, wow, you know, I was talking shit on Dean Douglas last time, but I actually really liked this segment, and I thought Douglas was doing very well with his, like, condescending professorial attitude and everything like that. You know, I love how he scratches the chalkboard, and McMahon's like, oh, not that sound again. But you know, I mean, yeah, God, I gotta say, I like Shane Douglas, man. He's a good talent. What did you guys think of Dean Douglas?
Bleh.
Okay, fair enough.
Purely hateable. He seemed like a pretty good heel, but I thought the robe he had on was pretty distracting. The little rainbow stripes on it.
Yeah, it just had a giant exclamation point on the hood.
His trunks had an exclamation point too, I think. Yeah. This is what I was talking about last time, where it's like Shane Douglas is pretty great. I think they called him the franchise in ECW. Yeah. And like he's awesome, and he's so articulate, and like I think maybe that's why he got saddled with the professor thing, is because he has this very like articulate air to him and stuff. But like, I just wish they would just let him be Shane Douglas when he came to the WWF. But Vince always kind of saddles you with some original gimmick that he creates for you instead of what you already had. And, you know, I mean, sometimes it works, but a lot of times it doesn't. Anyway, so then we get a tag match where it's Tatanka and Kama with Ted DiBiase versus Savio Vega and Bob Sparkplug Holly. And we get yeah, this is a rough one. This is definitely the worst. This was even worse than the jobber match later. Like I think this is like the worst part of the show. But we get McMahon. Yeah. We get McMahon recapping Henry Godwinn slopping Ted DiBiase with his slop bucket. Again, that small clip was plugging Psycho Sid versus Henry Godwinn at In Your House. I feel like that's kind of a weak build to the match, though. You know, just have Godwinn randomly slopping DiBiase or whatever. But at least there was some plug.
Real quick.
Yeah.
And this is actually going back to, you know, what could have been going on that Monday night. Because obviously this was pre-taped, but it turns out that week and that Monday night, the shuttle Endeavor landed.
Oh.
So it was the end of a space mission. Now, it looked like it happened earlier in the evening, so I didn't necessarily seen it eating into Nitro's ratings, but Jerry Lawler, the King, did make reference to it when they were talking about the slop. He started talking about the backup sewage problem on the shuttle Endeavor, which, given that it was a taped show, it's either I think they must have kind of put that in there to make it seem more timely than it actually was.
I noticed that, and yeah, I mean, I gotta say, back in the day, Jerry Lawler was pretty good at bringing in the social commentary and the news and the pop culture and all of that. It's funny, like nowadays when he tries to do it, because he's still a commentator for Raw, believe it or not. Nowadays he just sounds so outdated when he tries to make his references, but back in the day he was really good at it. The other thing that Lawler said during this tag match, he was plugging In Your House because Savio Vega is going to face Waylon Mercy. And he was saying Waylon Mercy is going to flatten Savio like Hurricane Marilyn flattened the Caribbean. And I was like, damn. That is some insensitive shit.
That is bad.
I actually laughed, though, because I was like, hey, man, you got to be a true heel. Like, you got to say some dastardly stuff sometimes. And, like, you know, but it was kind of like, oh, they would never say that nowadays. Like, they would never say that now. Again, they're putting so much effort into plugging Mercy and Vega in your house. And I'm like, I guess I gotta watch it now. I also loved how Lawler was making fun of Vince for dancing to Savio's Latin music. And I really wish we could have seen Vince dancing to the music, because all we heard was Jerry Lawler being like, McMahon, you look ridiculous. You don't have any rhythm. Like, you better hope the camera doesn't get on you right now. You're going to be embarrassed. And I was like, why didn't we get Vince dancing? Anyway, yeah, Tex, what did you think of this thrown together tag match we got here?
The thing about it, I love DiBiase, and I think that anytime he's managing a tag team or a singles wrestler, it gives them instant credibility. But the Supreme Fighting Machine, Kama, and the Native American Tatanka, I don't know, this wasn't their greatest match. There were several botches, and I don't want to get into every single botch, but there was an arm drag botch in there, but that was actually from Sparkplug. I don't know, this match was kind of weak. I always did find that, or anytime I'm watching a Sparkplug match, that WWF logo on his trunks, I always thought that was kind of funny.
Ridiculous. Well, I think it's because he's a NASCAR driver, and that was like the logo that was on his car, I think. But like,
well, that makes sense.
But it's still funny. I mean, you're kind of a job guy if you got the company's logo on your tights.
Yeah, man, that's what I always thought too.
Yeah, for sure.
I thought it was funny how they kept baiting Sparkplug like the same way
every
time.
That.
Like they'd run over and taunt him, and then he gets in the ring, and then the ref ties him up, and then they started doing double team tag move stuff on Savio Vega.
I was hoping that Savio would get pissed off at Bob and do something to him, and then create a little rivalry between those two, because otherwise this match was totally forgettable. And I will say that the whole Tatanka gimmick, I was watching this with a buddy who is of Native American descent, and I'm not sure he got the whole way in which Tatanka is Native American, other than maybe it's a Native American name.
So that guy is Native American, if that means anything.
No, I looked it up. He is.
Yeah, he's a Lumbee Indian.
What was funny about his outfit was it's just like brown tights, and then it looks like someone just used paint and did hand paint on the tights. It's like, okay, like I guess, is that some kind of like Native American thing? Is that something the Lumbee tribe do?
Maybe.
I wrote this down as a question during the match, but do we like heel Tatanka better or face Tatanka? Because remember, he turned heel after he sold out to the $1 Million Man and became part of Money Inc. And there was that whole angle with he and Lex Luger. But I don't know, because I don't know. It seemed like he was really popular as a face, but his look to me and some of the facial expressions, I thought he made a decent heel.
That's a really good poll to bring up. I definitely like him better as a face. Although, like, his attire was a lot cooler as a face. He made a lot more sense as a face. I guess that could make his heel turn particularly impactful in a way. Like, Ted DiBiase really can buy anybody. Yeah, and like Tatanka had that undefeated streak for a really long time when he first came in as a face.
Oh, yeah.
And sadly, he lost to Ludwig Borga, of all people. What's really funny is on this one old Raw episode, Tatanka was doing some like Native American ceremony in the ring where, some elder from his tribe had come out and like they were giving him some special ceremony where they gave him some feather. I know that sounds terrible, but it was like some kind of thing where they were giving him some ceremony. And Tatanka gave a promo as a face in the ring, and it was really, really bad. And so maybe at that point when he gave that face promo where he actually had to talk, Vince was like, we're going to turn you, and we're just going to make you a $1 billion man stooge, or something. But I like that Tatanka Lex Luger feud where you didn't know which person was getting bought out by the $1 Million Man. Yeah. I actually thought that was pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I guess I vote for face Tatanka, but I did like in this match how as you guys said, Bob Holly kept trying to get into the ring, and it was like allowing the heels to beat up Savio behind the ref's back. And I love how the announcers were just blaming Bob Holly. Like they were like Vince is like, Bob Holly needs to get out of the ring. He needs to get out of the ring. He needs to keep his cool. And yeah, I just love how they were just burying Bob Holly for being a terrible tag team partner. Yeah, as Tex said, there were some botches in the match. Honestly, the finish looked really nasty because like Sparkplug came off the top rope to do like a crossbody on Kama, and Kama caught him and turned it into a power slam, but he just like dropped Holly on his head during the power slam. Like it looked bad. Like it kind of looked like Holly really could have hurt his neck, and thankfully he didn't. Although later Brock Lesnar dropped Hardcore Holly on his head and broke his neck. Fun fact. So Holly did have a neck injury, but that he recovered from. But thankfully he didn't have one during this botched finish. But yeah, anyway, Tatanka and Kama win after 5 minutes and 47 seconds, which seemed a lot longer. Then we get a quick promo from Razor Ramon backstage, who's vowing to take out Dean Douglas this Sunday at In Your House, and he's like, and Bookworm, the classroom is going to be in my house. And then he says, Ivy League don't mean nothing because my house is the gutter. And I was like, damn.
I love that.
I did too. Yeah. He's awesome. But yeah, I mean, any thoughts on Razor here?
I just enjoyed his house is in the gutter line.
Solid promo overall from Razor. I loved it.
Yeah, definitely. So we get our, token jobber match of the evening. So Jean-Pierre Lafitte comes out to face Brian Walsh. And before we get into Jobber Watch, I just want to say that I loved how Pierre had stolen not only Bret's glasses from the fan, but he had also stolen Bret Hart's jacket, which was a gift from Bret Hart's mother, which was revealed when Bret called in. I love the phone interview with Bret Hart during the match where he's calling in from the set of Lonesome Dove.
We should do the Lonesome Dove episode.
Oh, man. Oh, God. Yeah, we might have to do Baywatch and we might have to do Lonesome Dove. But I loved Pierre. I love there's a clip of him like wearing Bret's jacket too, and that just awesome. And for those of you who don't know, Jean-Pierre Lafitte is the same guy who was Pierre from the Quebecers. He's a very solid Canadian wrestler who's very agile for his size. And, I would just say overall, Pierre is a pretty underrated worker. The WWF hasn't done too many pirate gimmicks, which maybe is a good thing. They did do kind of like a Jack Sparrow kind of rip-off character in more recent memory. And then there's this Japanese female wrestler named Kairi Sane, and she used to come out dressed as a pirate, and that was actually pretty awesome, like this female pirate, and she would have this like, she'd have the steering wheel, like the helm of the boat, and she'd like carry it around. Yeah, Jean-Pierre was the origin story of pirate gimmicks in the WWF, and he was very short-lived, unfortunately, but he fights a guy named Brian Walsh, and I think this is a great time for Tex to do his Jobber Watch.
Brian Walsh is the subject of Jobber Watch this time, and there wasn't much I could find on Brian Walsh, unfortunately. He's from New Hampshire, and he was trained by Killer Kowalski, who also trained famously Hunter Hearst Helmsley. I thought that was kind of interesting. And Brian Walsh, he spent most of his time in the WWF. He would job for the WWF until about 98. He was briefly in WCW, where he jobbed for such names as Ultimo Dragon and Chris Benoit. But then he would eventually job for Brian Christopher later on, and that was pretty much it. He was done by about 98.
He looked all right. I mean, he had a couple spots where, he was definitely flowing well with the energy of the match. I felt like he did fine in his jobber role. So Jean-Pierre Lafitte, after 3 minutes and 18 seconds, he hits his somersault cannonball off the top rope, which is pretty awesome. It's just kind of like it's like a senton splash kind of. And yeah, he's a big dude, so he's got to hit that very precisely to not hurt somebody.
On this past match with Brian Walsh and Jean-Pierre Lafitte, I thought everything in this match looked painful as hell. I counted the moves, the successful moves for Brian Walsh. He landed 5 moves in this match, and a couple of which were like, kicks to the gut. but everything looked like it hurt. I mean, the apron spot from Lafitte when he picked up Walsh and slams him chest first into the corner of the apron, and the cannonball spot looked like it hurt like hell. He just landed square on him. Painful. All of it looked painful, but I gave it 2 stars. That's a higher mark than I gave the previous match with Kama and Tatanka versus Plug and Savio Vega.
No, yeah, I agree. I think this jobber match was a lot better than the tag match. Yeah. And honestly, I guess Brian Walsh got in more hope spots there than a lot of jobbers do, but I enjoyed Jean-Pierre Lafitte, and I'm going to watch In Your House 3, and I'm looking forward to seeing the Brett match with him. So before the tag match with all these big bodies that are going to be in the ring, Mabel and Yokozuna, we get this shot of the WWF officials reinforcing the ring for the main event, and I kind of just like that little quick spot where they're like reinforcing the turnbuckles and all of that stuff.
It's like, really?
I liked it. And then we get Vince McMahon narrating the history of King Mabel, basically, and the rise of Men on a Mission. And I love the one little clip where Sir Mo is like, "Long live King Mabel."
I love that when Sir Mo read the proclamation when King Mabel won the King of the Ring. I thought it was amazing.
It's
hilarious.
I love it too, man. And I love how the fans were so pissed about Mabel winning that King of the Ring that they literally threw trash at him. Like there's this they got the camera on Mabel, and this soda cup flies and just hits him in the face.
They hit him in the face.
Amazing.
Yikes.
Man, I think Men on a Mission is another good topic for a poll that we could do for the three of us right here. But this cracked me up too. Another thing that happened before the match was McMahon and Jerry Lawler were doing, they were doing the advertisements, and McMahon did this Got Milk promo where he's like, "Got milk? No milk for your coffee, no milk for your morning, and you know what that means." And Lawler looks at him and just goes like, "What did you just utter, McMahon?" And I was dying because McMahon did just sound like he was totally floundering through that Got Milk ad, and I don't think McMahon really knew what the ad was trying to do, and so his inflection was all wrong, and I just love how Lawler was like, "What did you just utter, McMahon?" It cracked me up. So we get the main event between Owen Hart and Yokozuna and Men on a Mission. It's a non-title match, and I think in a way, again, it's just trying to lead up to In Your House, because Yoko and Owen are going to face Shawn and Diesel in this weird triple header tag match where all of the belts are on the line at once.
I actually, as they explained it, and I think I understand the concept. So if Diesel is pinned, whoever beat Diesel gets the world championship, right? And then if someone pins Michaels, they get the Intercontinental. And then if either Owen or Yoko are pinned, then Diesel and Shawn get the tag team.
That is correct. And there's also another stipulation on it, though, where you can't intentionally disqualify yourself. So if anybody in the match intentionally DQs themselves, they'll have to forfeit their belt. Ooh. So yeah, there's this extra little stipulation in it. But so 2 things. What do you guys think of Yoko and Owen as a tag team with Mr. Fuji and Jim Cornette? What do you guys think of this tag team in general?
Yeah, I have no idea who thought this one up, and I like how they try and sell the concept that these guys really have a relationship and teamwork, but I don't see it, and I felt kind of bad for Owen Hart because I remember Owen Hart eventually getting to the point where he's much more the type who's speaking on his own, and in this you just have Jim Cornette yapping. It doesn't really work for me.
It seems like their only common ground between Yoko and Owen is that they both feuded with Bret Hart at one time, and so that's the only thing that I can see as to why they'd be a tag team or whatever. But in watching tag matches with Yoko and Owen, it seems like Owen's in there to kind of pass the time. He's the one in there doing most of the work, and you're gonna have Yoko on the apron for a while, catching his breath, getting his rest, because at this point he was gaining a lot of weight. So it kind of worked because Owen's such a great worker. He could fill the time with his good ring work, and then have Yoko come in for his big man spots, his leg drop spots, and everything. But other than that, I mean, they're not one of my favorite tag teams of all time, but Owen's so good that he can make it work. And And Cornette as your mouthpiece, I mean, you could do much worse than having Cornette as your mouthpiece, especially as a heel tag team.
Yeah, I kind of like how they already have Mr. Fuji as a manager, but they're like, Fuji can't really talk either, so we're going to add another manager to the team. Yeah, I love Jim Cornette, obviously, but yeah, you're right, Tex. Like, I think having Yoko and Mabel on tag teams is actually a lot better for them as workers because it does prevent them from getting so gassed throughout the match. Like, they're both able to, get their rest spots in on the apron, and that way when they are in the ring, they can be super impactful. And they even did a good job in the tag match of kind of building up to that moment where Yoko and Mabel were both going to be in the ring together and facing off. And, there was
the double tagging.
Yeah. 2 little hot tags for Yoko and Mabel. And, then you got that combined like 1,000 pounds in the ring at once or whatever, and that was pretty cool. And I loved how Lawler had this line about Mabel where he said when Mabel was a kid, he could only play Seek, which I thought was a funny line about his size.
Okay, yeah, because I was wondering about that line. I couldn't understand what he said, and I think, wasn't it Vince that asked him to repeat himself, and he said it again, but I still didn't pick up on it.
I mean, yeah, it was like a hide-and-seek joke, yeah. I mean, yeah. It was a little hard to follow, but
I like that.
I thought it was funny. Yeah, eventually, Owen and Yoko win. Owen hits a drop toe hold on Mo, and then Yoko gives Mo a leg drop to the back of the head, which that also would need to be carefully done with Yoko's size. And so that was a nice spot. And then I liked how Yoko even tripped up Mabel when Mabel was trying to break up the 3 count. Yoko grabbed his leg and Mabel toppled over and everything. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, business, where I did feel bad about Owen Hart here. Like, he was last year's King of the Ring winner. He had this amazing program with Brett. And now he's just a tag guy with Yoko. And it just feels like a big underutilization of him. And although I did like how because I kept thinking to myself, like, why don't you just have Owen versus Shawn Michaels for the Intercontinental title and, like, get the belts off of Owen and Yoko and just have a program between Shawn and Owen. And the announcers even kind of alluded to that, where they're like, Owen Hart keeps saying that Shawn Michaels is, like, ignoring his challenge for the Intercontinental title and all of that kind of stuff. And in my back of my head, I was like, that might even just be true. Like, there's a chance that Shawn Michaels is just like, nope, I don't want to work with Owen Hart. Like, there's a decent chance that probably was the case. But yeah, I mean, what do you guys think of Men on a Mission? Firstly, what do you think of Men on a Mission as a face team? And then what do you think of the King Mabel Sir Mo duo?
I don't mind the duo as the face team. It's a little weird. I feel like they could definitely use Jim Cornette.
I loved them as a face team, especially when they first came out. They had the little music videos with Oscar rapping, and Oscar would lead them to the ring with a microphone in his hand, spitting fire. I always thought they would get a good pop. Like, the crowd was always into it. You'd always see them waving their hands back and forth. It seemed like the whole arena was always waving their hands back and forth. I didn't like them quite as much as a heel tag team. Like, Mabel winning the King of the Ring never really made a whole lot of sense to me. He's probably like the worst King of the Ring winner of all time. He was probably the most underwhelming of all of them. As a tag team, I always liked them as a tag team. I thought Mo was a sneaky good worker in the ring. I mean, you'd see him pull off some decent moves. Even in this match, he had a nice little power slam. Him in the ring with Owen, I mean, you didn't really seem like he was falling on his face or screwing up too much. I thought they were a decent tag team.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, I think you might be exaggerating when you said that Oscar was spitting fire on the mic. I think that might be oh my god, amazing.
M to the O, got my boy and his name is Mo. Mo is fast and he is not slow. His name's Mo and his name's not Joe. He kick butt with no delay. There's not a wrestler he can play. Slam him, bang him, then he pin him, pick them up and then he'll skin him. We're on a mission! We're on a mission! We're on a mission! We're on a mission! I got my boy, he's willing and able. What's his name? His name is Mabel. Mabel, I said it. He's on the case, but call him Mabel to his face. 495 and he's built to last. So let the sign for you, the boy is fast. M to the A to the B-E-L. He's guaranteed to ring your bell. We're on a mission. We're on a mission. We're on a mission.
That's right.
We're on a mission.
From what I remember about Oscar, it was a lot of like whoop, there it is, and a lot of wave your hands in the air like you don't care and stuff like that. I wish that Oscar was still with them when they were heels. Like I would have loved if Oscar was coming out doing like a King Mabel rap. I would have liked that. But I guess when they turned heel, Vince no longer had any use for Oscar. I agree with you. I did like those old promos where they were like on the streets with Oscar and they were like rapping.
It was so bad. But
I guess they were supposed to be like community leaders or something, like men on a mission, like doing activist stuff or something. I don't know. It was kind of confusing, and I don't know why they dressed in those big purple pajamas. You know, Yoko and Owen win the match, and then afterwards we get a quick backstage interview with Diesel and Shawn Michaels, and they're just talking about their triple header match at In Your House with Yoko and Owen, and Shawn says that Owen's nose is growing from all the lies he's been telling about his, that Shawn was denying his challenges for a match, and, they give the whole two dudes with attitude and chaps with all the straps, like they basically do like the same promo they did last week. So, I mean, I don't know. I thought it was fine. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts about the Shawn Diesel promo.
No thoughts on that. None.
Not so much, but I enjoyed Cornette after the match in the ring with Owen and Yoko, kind of laying out the stakes for the pay-per-view coming up.
They're going to go from two dudes with attitudes to two fellas that are yellow.
Yeah, dude. Cornette was the king of just turning a phrase on the spot. Like, at the end of the Cornette segment in the ring, he does this like, in your house, in your face, and around their waists. And I love that like little just rhyme he pulled. And yeah, he did the fella yellow rhyme. And I love how he was calling out Shawn and Diesel as being egomaniacs, because you could tell that there was a little bit of a shoot there, because Cornette did not like Shawn Michaels. And I could tell that when he was like berating them for being egomaniacs who only care about their titles and that they'll choose to protect their titles rather than protecting each other. He also said Shawn and Diesel have a history of fighting like a couple of divorcees. I thought that was good. I just think Cornette did a great job of ripping them. And, he put over his own team, as Business alluded to earlier, the idea that Yoko and Owen are a team and they actually have chemistry, which is different than singles competition. He also calls Gorilla Monsoon President Magilla Gorilla at one point. Cornette was just going off, and he just went on for like 2 minutes, just yelling into the mic, and I thought it was pretty good. I think it's a weird main event for In Your House, because it's like, you got all your champions in one match, which I guess has some kind of draw to it, but it's like, couldn't you just have good individual programs for all of them, and have that be the card of the pay-per-view? Because I think it just kind of showed that Diesel as champion really wasn't working too well. Like, it's almost like you got the heavyweight title on Diesel, but, you got to have Shawn there to, like, give him a rub and try to get him over, and you can't even give Diesel his own main event because the Diesel Mabel stuff just hadn't worked at all, and, I don't know. I just feel like it's kind of sloppy booking in a way where, I don't know. Cornette did a great job of putting it over, but even that didn't make me too excited, but maybe In Your House 3 will change my mind when I watch it. Jerry the King Lawler gives his royal prediction, and he says that Diesel is going to be the one to lose the match, and that Yoko is going to be the one to pin him, and Yoko will become the 3-time heavyweight champ. I'm pretty sure that is not what's going to happen, but we will see. And they also plug next week's Raw, where we're going to get British Bulldog versus The Undertaker, which, that sounds pretty good to me. I got to say, guys, I think Raw won for this week. I don't know what you guys think, but I was pleasantly surprised by Raw, whereas I was underwhelmed by Nitro. And like I said, maybe the ratings that I read about have tainted my viewing, but I just felt like I was a lot more into the Raw episode this time.
I'll agree with that. Like, I thought Raw had the best match out of the two shows. I thought, because I gave the tag match, I gave Yoko and Owen versus Men on a Mission, I gave that 3 stars. I thought it kept my attention throughout, and I thought it was entertaining throughout. But, as far as WCW, as far as Nitro, their matches kind of fell a little bit short. I mean, even the Jobber match on Raw was entertaining. So yeah, I felt like Raw won this week, certainly.
I have my I thought actually Nitro won. I did not care for the order of matches in Raw. I thought it was a lot closer this time, but I still felt like the energy was with Nitro.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I agree with you that I think putting the Kid and Ramon as the main event would have made a lot more sense. I also think you could have replaced the Tatanka, Vega, Bob Holly match with something more worthy.
I'll tell you what, I was more interested during that Tatanka match, Tatanka and Kama, in finding the creature of the night in the crowd. And I actually found him.
Oh, there you go.
And I got a timestamp. But yeah, I mean, I do think Nitro takes the win for this week, in my opinion. But I am really looking forward to Undertaker and Bulldog next week on Raw.
Yeah, that's a good pair of workers to put together. They tried to book it as, two dark sides colliding, which I guess means Bulldog turning heel.
You could go a bunch of different directions with Bulldog and having a dark side, but it might get a little too personal there.
That would be great if they were talking about him like exercising his demons. I don't know. I was very entertained overall by these September 18th shows. I thought they just had a lot of fun stuff going on. But overall, I feel like Raw, to me, wins out. I might have just been overly saturated by WCW content from having watched all of Fall Brawl. So, I mean, and maybe that'll happen to me next time because I'll be watching In Your House and, maybe I'll just get my fill of WWF. So, I don't know. But yeah, so we'll see, next week we'll get the September 25th episodes of both shows. I guess the biggest things to look forward to would be Nitro having the Randy Savage Taskmaster match. And we'll have, as we said, Bulldog and Taker on Raw. And I'll be back with some In Your House 3 reporting to do as well. So,
real quick on In Your House. Now, wasn't it different at first when it first came out? Like, it wasn't the same price point as your normal 5 pay-per-views in WWF. And I thought, and I might be mistaken on this, but I thought it was an hour shorter than your typical WWF pay-per-view at the time.
Yeah, so the In Your Houses were a strategy on Vince's part to, turn house shows into pay-per-views, basically. Because they were already doing house shows all the time. And so Vince was like, oh, we'll plug them as quote-unquote In Your House, and, we'll do them, in between the big 4 pay-per-views as a way to generate more revenue. And it really was successful, actually, because they would get the gate from the house show, and they would always do a decent amount of pay-per-view buys. And it really actually helped the WWF tread water during this time when it was going through tough financial situations. So In Your House was actually a great idea from Vince that really helped the company survive. And they were cheaper than normal pay-per-views to buy, and they were shorter. They ran for an hour and a half. And famously on the very first one, they actually gave away a house. At the very first In Your House, they had this
I remember that.
Yeah, they had this sweepstakes where someone would actually win a house, and Todd Pettengill called the guy on the phone. It's like, you won the house, but then they did not give away a house every time, although but yeah, I mean, some of the In Your Houses have famously great matches. There's this fatal 4-way In Your House where it's Vader, Stone Cold, Taker, and Brett, and it is awesome. It's an amazing match, man. So there were some In Your Houses where you got really great stuff. Bret Hart seemed to always have an incredible match on all of them, whether it's with Hakushi or Jean-Pierre Lafitte or so In Your Houses are great, and since they're so short, you can easily digest them, and it's not like you have to sit down and commit to a 3-hour pay-per-view or something. So it'll be easier for me to watch than Fall Brawl was, probably. Yeah, I mean, so we got 2 votes for Raw, 1 vote for Nitro. This is the first week that Raw has beaten Nitro in the ratings. And like I said, I thought deservingly so, but it could just be because of the Thursday night time slot versus Nitro's Monday night time slot and what was going on. Business, did you ever kind of get to the bottom of that, or was it too cryptic?
I the only thing I can imagine is that shuttle landing might have drawn away some viewers, or alternatively, maybe people are just tired of wrestling after watching Fall Brawl and didn't watch Monday night, but they ended up watching by Thursday. So
fair enough. Well, yep, we'll be back next week with the September 25th, 1995 episodes of both shows, and we'll be coming off of In Your House. This is Frank Incensed. For Big Tex and Big Business, we're signing off, and hope you enjoyed the show.